I rescued 15 wolves from freezing to death. I never imagined the last 3 were the triplet alpha kings. The strong survive. The weak serve. That was the cold mantra drilled into my bones the night my pack left me behind. The blizzard tore through the pine forests of Colorado with unbridled fury, raw and merciless. Ice-laced wind slammed against the thin wooden walls of my cabin, shaking every beam until the whole structure groaned like it might splinter apart at any second. Snow piled high against the windows, opaque and suffocating, blanketing the entire world in endless white. I sat alone on the scuffed wooden floor, my back pressed to the cold wall, and watched the faint taillights of my pack's SUVs vanish into the raging storm. I was no longer one of them. I was dead weight. You're a liability, Kalen. The harsh, emotionless tone of my pack alpha, Ronan, still echoed sharp in my ears. 3 hours had passed since he'd uttered those cruel words, since every single member of my pack climbed into their vehicles and abandoned me to the unforgiving winter wilderness. My preheat had flared up unexpectedly, a weak, pitiful surge that slowed my pace. And that was all the excuse they needed to cast me aside. Stay here. We'll come back once the road's clear. A blatant lie. I'd seen the empty indifference in Ronan's icy gray eyes. They did not care if I froze. They did not care if I starved. I was merely an Omega with no combat strength, no hunting prowess, no valuable assets to offer the pack, nothing but a warm body for their selfish desires. And on this brutal, storm-torn night, I was not even worth saving. I kicked the cabin door shut with a sharp thud, sliding the rusted deadbolt into place. The lock was meaningless. It could not keep out the bitter cold creeping through the wall cracks. It could not silence the gnawing hunger in my stomach. Most importantly, it could not soothe the hollow, aching emptiness burrowed deep within my chest. The faint bond tethering me to my pack stretched taut, pulled thin like a frayed wire moments from snapping. Pack bonds never truly broke, not completely, but in that moment, I wished mine would. This tiny, one-room cabin with a rickety loft was the only thing my mother had left me before her untimely death. It used to be my safe haven, back when I foolishly believed a pack was family. Back when I naively thought an Omega was meant to be protected, not discarded like broken trash. You're braver than they know, my sweet boy. Her soft, scarred voice whispered in the back of my mind, a faint comfort amid the chaos. Never let them shrink you small. I was not small anymore. I was furious. I was freezing. And I was done kneeling for anyone. I crouched beside the barely functional wood stove, feeding the last 3 dry logs into the feeble flames. The fire sputtered, flickering weakly as if it too understood we were fighting a losing battle against the storm. My supplies were dangerously limited. 2 dented cans of vegetable soup sitting on the chipped counter. No cell service for miles. No neighboring cabins within walking distance. To make matters worse, my pack had stolen the emergency radio on their way out, leaving me completely isolated from the outside world. I wrapped a tattered wool blanket tight around my shoulders, settling cross-legged on the cold floor. My fingers trembled, but it was not fear that shook my bones. It was heat, a slow, smoldering warmth coiling deep in my veins. Nothing like the uncontrollable hormonal heat every Omega feared. This heat was mine, raw, untamed, and hidden. I flexed my palm, and the stove fire flared to life in response. Bright, hungry flames licked upward toward the rusted ceiling, roaring hotter and brighter before I reined the power back with a single thought. Pyrokinesis. The ancient old books my mother kept hidden in the loft had given the power a name. I could create fire, shape it, bend it to my every will, as if the flames were an extension of my own flesh and blood. No one knew my secret. Not Ronan, not my treacherous pack, not even my mother, though I suspected she'd figured out the truth in her final days. Omegas were born to be soft, fragile, compliant, decorative pawns meant to serve alphas. We were never supposed to wield power. If anyone discovered my ability, I would either be killed on the spot or chained up like a weapon for the pack to exploit. So I hid. I shrank myself small. I let them label me weak and useless, all while burying my fire magic so deep I sometimes convinced myself it was nothing but a vivid hallucination. But not tonight. Tonight, bitterness and stubbornness burned brighter than any flame. I let tiny embers dance across my fingertips, warm and obedient, chasing away the icy chills seeping into my skin. The fire purged the cold from my bones, the cold of the storm and the far colder ache of betrayal. I was not weak, and I would not die frozen in this cabin, waiting for a pack that had never wanted me. My stomach growled loudly, echoing through the silent room. I glanced at the 2 soup cans, mentally rationing my food. If I was careful, I could stretch the meals to last 3 days. After that, I would figure it out. I always did. The wind howled outside, rattling the cabin windows relentlessly. The world felt eerily quiet, oppressively empty. I had always hated being alone, yet I hated being surrounded by people who treated me like garbage far more. I sat in the flickering firelight, surrounded by silence and snow, with nothing but canned soup, hidden fire magic, and a stubborn resolve to survive. And then I heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound was slow, deliberate, and entirely out of place amid the storm. My eyes snapped open, every muscle in my body tensing on instinct. The wind did not make that noise. Tree branches did not scrape wood with such calculated rhythm. Something alive was outside my door. My heart hammered against my ribs, hard and frantic. I stood slowly, my bare feet silent against the frozen wooden floor. The stove fire flared higher, reacting to my spike of adrenaline, casting wild, distorted shadows across the cabin walls. It's just a raccoon, I muttered to myself in a hoarse whisper, trying to calm my racing mind. Or a deer. Nothing dangerous. The scratching came again, louder this time. I knew better. This was how horror stories ended. Stupid people opening doors in deadly blizzards. Yet my hand moved on its own, twisting the rusted lock and pulling the door open a narrow crack. Frigid air slammed into me like a solid fist, sharp snowflakes stinging my exposed cheeks. I squinted into the blinding whiteout, struggling to make out any shape in the swirling snow. And then I saw it. A massive wolf lay collapsed on my porch, its matted fur crusted over with ice. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, ragged gasps, barely clinging to life. Tremors racked its large body, violent and unrelenting. It would die right there on my doorstep if I did nothing. I should have shut the door. Wolves were wild, unpredictable killers. Logic screamed at me to leave the beast to the cruel mercy of the storm. But I knew the agony of being abandoned in the cold. I knew the terror of dying alone. Hang in there, buddy. I breathed, stepping outside into the snow. I ignored the bitter ice biting into my skin, dropping to my knees beside the fallen wolf. Its eyes fluttered open, and I froze in place. Molten amber, bright, glowing amber eyes, burning vividly through the blizzard. No ordinary wolf possessed eyes that luminous, that intelligent. It blinked once, slow and deliberate, a wordless promise that it would not hurt me. That was all the permission I needed. I slid my arms beneath its heavy, muscular body, grunting as I lifted its solid weight. Ice-cold fur soaked my flannel shirt, but I did not falter. I stumbled backward into the cabin, kicking the door shut firmly behind me, and gently lowered the wolf onto the floor beside the roaring stove. It did not struggle. It did not snarl. It simply lay limp in my arms, its intelligent amber eyes locked steadily on my face. I grabbed every towel and blanket I owned, frantically brushing ice and melting snow from its matted fur. I rubbed its stiff limbs to restore circulation my movements practiced and precise. Muscle memory from years of helping my mother nurse injured wild animals. I'd always had a gift. I could sense the pain in living things, taste their fear in the cold air. My mother had called it a blessing. I'd always called it a curse until this moment. I had barely finished stabilizing the amber-eyed wolf when the scratching returned. A bitter, disbelieving laugh slipped past my lips. You have got to be kidding me. I trudged back to the door, opening it once more. Another wolf lay huddled on the porch, smaller than the first, its silver-gray fur encased in ice. I dragged it inside. Then another, and another. One by one, I pulled frozen wolves from the snow until my tiny cabin was crammed full of shivering, half-dead beasts. By the time the last wolf crossed my threshold, I counted 15 pairs of glowing, hyper-intelligent eyes staring back at me. I stood in the middle of my cramped cabin, soaked to the bone, my fingers raw and numb, and exhaled a shaky breath. New rule, I announced flatly to the pack of wolves. Nobody dies in my house. Got it. The large black-furred wolf with amber eyes huffed once, a low rumbling sound that sounded suspiciously like quiet laughter. I shot at a deadpan glare. You think this is funny? It blinked slowly, mocking and amused, and I rubbed my temples in exasperation. I was arguing with a wolf. On the worst night of my entire life. I pushed aside my exhaustion and got to work. I tended to each wolf methodically, checking for frostbite, broken bones, and internal shock. I wrapped trembling bodies in blankets, adjusted the stove heat with subtle flicks of my wrist, and rationed my minimal supplies to keep every beast breathing. Time blurred together. The storm raged outside, and I lost myself in the repetitive, comforting rhythm of survival. When I finally reached the last 3 wolves at the back of the huddle, my legs shook with unrelenting exhaustion. These 3 were different, dangerous, powerful, and radiating an intimidating aura that made my omega instincts scream in raw warning. The first was the massive black wolf with molten amber eyes. Its fur was darker than midnight, sleek and glossy even beneath melted snow. Raw, unbridled power rolled off its body in thick, suffocating waves. Beside it lay a wolf with pale mercury fur, its coat shimmering faintly in the firelight. Its eyes were sharp hazel, cold and calculating, never once breaking focus from my moving form. The third was the leanest of the trio, its fur the muted gray of ash and smoke. Its eyes were hard, cold steel, and every subtle shift of its body screamed quiet menace. It looked smaller than the other 2, yet it felt the most deadly of them all. I knelt down in front of the black wolf, my voice low and quiet. You're the leader, aren't you? It did not move. It did not blink. It simply watched me, unblinking and intense. I lifted my hand slowly, hovering my palm an inch above its dark fur. I'm going to touch you. Don't bite me. The moment my fingers sank into its thick fur, everything shifted. Warmth exploded through my chest, sudden and overwhelming. It was not a painful heat. This was a deep, soul-deep warmth, like sunlight pouring directly into my veins. My breath caught in my throat, and I jerked my hand back instinctively. The black wolf's amber eyes flared brighter, glowing like burning embers in the dim firelight. My heart slammed against my ribs, and a sweet, unfamiliar scent flooded the air. Pine smoke and warm cedar, tangled with something wild and intoxicating I could not name. The silver and ash-gray wolves snapped their heads toward me in unison, their sharp eyes locking onto my trembling form. I stumbled backward, pressing a hand hard against my chest. The strange warmth lingered beneath my skin, a permanent brand etched into my soul. The massive black wolf rose to its feet, moving slow and deliberate across the creaking floorboards. It was enormous, its shoulder reaching my waist, every muscle rippling beneath its dark fur. It moved with silent, predatory grace, closing the distance between us until its cold nose brushed the vulnerable skin of my throat. It inhaled deeply, slow and reverent, as if memorizing every part of my scent. Before I could process the sensation, the silver wolf appeared at my right side, its cold nose pressing against my wrist. The ash-gray wolf positioned itself behind me, its muzzle resting lightly against the nape of my neck. I was surrounded, trapped between three impossibly intelligent, powerful wolves, my body hyper-aware of every subtle movement they made. My pulse stuttered, every nerve ending burning with raw, foreign heat. The black wolf rumbled, a low, vibrating sound that seeped into my bones, sending a shiver pooling low in my stomach. "This is officially the weirdest night of my life," I whispered shakily. The silver wolf huffed in agreement, and I let out a breathless, hysterical laugh. One by one, the trio stepped back, moving in perfect, synchronized harmony. The black wolf settled closest to the stove, the silver one beside him, and the ash-gray wolf stationed itself by the door, on guard, protecting our small cabin from the raging storm outside. I sank weakly to the floor, my legs giving out beneath me. Ordinary wolves did not act this way. They did not coordinate. They did not guard. They did not understand human words, or look at a stranger with a hunger so intense it bordered on reverence. I stared at the black wolf, and for a split second, I could have sworn it smiled. I spent the next hour melting snow in a dented metal pot, mixing my last 2 cans of soup into a thin, warm broth. There was barely enough to sustain 15 wolves and 1 starving omega, but it was all I had. I stirred the simmering broth aggressively, my frustration and exhaustion bleeding into every sharp movement. The black wolf padded silently across the floor, stopping directly behind me. I did not turn to face him. "I'm not in the mood for company," I muttered sharply. He huffed, warm breath fanning the back of my neck, and I spun around, brandishing a metal spatula like a weapon. "Are you mocking me?" I demanded. "I'm having an existential crisis here. This is not funny." The wolf sat perfectly still, his tongue lolling out in an obvious canine grin. The silver wolf lifted its head to watch our exchange, its hazel eyes sharp and amused. Even the stoic ash-gray wolf cracked an eye open, observing my every reaction. I groaned, dropping my weaponized spatula onto the counter with a loud clatter. "Great. All 3 of you are comedians." Bitterness spilled out of me unfiltered, raw and unguarded. Ronan called me a liability. My pack left me to die out here in the snow. I'm useless, weak, nothing but an omega who can't fight or hunt. They didn't even bother to take me with them. I did not realize I was crying until the first tear splashed onto my cold knuckle. I'm tired of being overlooked. I'm tired of being discarded. A warm, heavy weight pressed against my back. The black wolf leaned into me, solid and steady, his body heat seeping through my damp flannel shirt. The silver wolf pressed against my right leg, and the ash-gray wolf drifted to my left side. Once again, they surrounded me, not as predators, but as protectors. My throat tightened, my resolve crumbling. "Don't do this," I whispered brokenly. "Don't pity me." The black wolf rumbled again, the vibration thrumming through my bones. It was not pity. I could feel it in the warmth of his body, in the quiet intensity of his amber gaze. Never pity. The silver wolf nudged my hand repeatedly with its cold nose, staring pointedly at its own fur. I stared at it blankly for a long moment before comprehension dawned. "You want me to pet you?" Its tail wagged once, sharp and deliberate. "Absolutely not," I denied stubbornly, even as my fingers tangled into its soft silver fur. "This is purely for survival. Body warmth only. Don't get attached." The silver wolf leaned into my touch, a pleased rumble vibrating in its chest. One by one, all 3 tails began to wag, slow and lazy. I sighed in helpless defeat, my tense shoulders slumping as I ran my fingers through their thick fur. I fed the broth to the wolves one by one, watching as they lapped at the warm liquid. The black wolf drank first, the others following his silent lead. When he finished, broth dripped down his dark muzzle, and I grabbed a rough towel to wipe his face. "You're a mess," I muttered, and he tilted his head into my palm, trusting and calm. I pulled back slowly, my voice quiet and vulnerable. "Don't get used to this. The storm will end, and you'll leave. Everyone always leaves." The black wolf pressed his forehead gently against mine, his cedar and smoke scent wrapping around me like a tangible blanket. For one heartbeat, I let myself imagine it, being wanted, being chosen, belonging somewhere for once in my lonely life. I pulled away before I could get addicted to the feeling. I insisted on staying awake to tend the stove, refusing to let my guard slip. Exhaustion dragged at my eyelids, but I fought to stay conscious. The three wolves would not let me be alone, though. The silver wolf lay directly in front of the stove, blocking my access on purpose. The ash-gray wolf remained stationed at the door, unyielding and vigilant. The black wolf settled beside me, his massive body curling around my legs. "You're all ridiculously stubborn," I mumbled, leaning my head back against the wall. His amber eyes crinkled with silent amusement, and he rested his heavy head on my thigh. Warmth seeped into my cold muscles, calming my racing heart. The silver wolf curled up on my other side, shoving its head beneath my free hand. Even the stoic ash-gray wolf softened his cold gaze, watching me with quiet attention. Against all logic, I relaxed. My fingers continued to card through their fur, and the steady sound of their breathing mixed with the crackling fire and distant wind. My eyes grew heavy, and despite every warning screaming in my mind, I drifted off into a deep, dreamless sleep. I woke to a sharp, ominous crack. The fire had burned low, casting faint shadows across the quiet cabin. The ash-gray wolf stood rigid by the door, its hackles raised high. The black and silver wolves jolted awake instantly, their bodies coiled and ready to strike. Another crack echoed outside, loud, splintering wood. The porch, I breathed in sudden realization. Snow had piled too high, weighing down the rotting wooden planks. I pushed myself unsteadily to my feet despite the black wolf's clear warning growl. "I have to check it. If the porch collapses, we lose our only exit." He blocked my path, his amber eyes blazing with unspoken fear. "I'm not asking for permission," I shot back, grabbing my coat and boots. The ash-gray wolf stepped aside, allowing me passage but never breaking his watchful stare. I pushed the door open, and the freezing wind hit me like a physical blow. Snow reached my waist, burying the rotting porch structure entirely. The wooden planks groaned loudly, threatening to splinter apart. I stepped forward carefully, testing each board beneath my boot. The black wolf followed silently, staying glued to my side. "I told you to stay inside," I snapped. He pressed his solid body against my leg, steadying my unbalanced steps. Stubborn beast. The porch groaned again, louder this time. The wood beneath my foot shifted, and then it gave way. I had no time to scream. 1 second I stood upright. The next I was plummeting downward into broken wood and sharp ice. Sharp teeth clamped into the back of my coat, yanking me backward with brutal, inhuman strength. I crashed into the black wolf's muscular body. The wind knocked violently from my lungs. Debris crashed down around us, splintered wood piercing the snow where I would have fallen. He held me tight, shielding my body with his own until the chaos settled. "I'm okay," I gasped, pushing weakly at his chest. "You can let go." He did not release me. His amber eyes were wide, wild with raw terror, an emotion I never thought I would see in such a powerful creature. And then his body began to shift. Bones cracked and rearranged beneath his fur, a low, pained growl rumbling in his throat. He did not shift fully into human form, but his paws morphed into large, clawed hands. Fur receded from his angular jawline, revealing half-human, half-wolf features. His amber eyes remained, bright and hypnotic, locked onto my shocked face. I stared at his clawed hands, my breath stolen from my lungs. "You're a shifter." He nodded once, slow and solemn. "All three of you." Another sharp nod. "The cold trapped you in wolf form," I deduced quietly. "You couldn't shift back." Shame flickered across his half-human features. His clawed thumb brushed gently across my cold cheek, tender despite its sharp edge. We stumbled back into the cabin, covered in snow and debris. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, every wolf in the room rose to their feet. The silver shifter circled me slowly, checking for cuts and bruises with frantic, caring movements. The ash-gray shifter abandoned his post, his steel eyes scanning every inch of my body for injury. Before I could process their concern, the massive black shifter dropped his head low in a deep, submissive bow. One by one, every single wolf in the cabin bowed their heads to me. My throat tightened. "Stop. Don't do that." The black shifter lifted his head, his amber gaze unwavering. "We owe you our lives." "I didn't save you for a debt," I argued softly. "You saved us because it was right." His silent reply echoed clearly in my mind. I sank down onto the blanket pile, and the three shifters crowded around me once more. I told them everything. My mother's painful death from cancer 2 years prior, joining the pack in search of family, the cruel realization that packs were never built on love. I admitted my bitterness, my loneliness, my fear of trusting anyone ever again. The black shifter listened quietly, his half-human form still partially shifted. When I finished speaking, guilt washed over his sharp features. "What?" I demanded, leaning forward. "What are you hiding?" He exchanged a silent glance with the other two shifters, a wordless conversation passing between their bonded souls. He walked to the frosted window, pressing his nose to the cold glass. In the condensation, he drew 3 overlapping crescent moons. My blood ran cold. 3 months. You've been watching me for 3 months. He nodded slowly. You watched my pack abandon me. I whispered, hurt cutting deep into my chest. You did nothing. We protected you. The silver shifter spoke for the first time, his voice soft and melodic. Human words, clear and unmistakable. We never let true harm touch you. The ash-gray shifter's deep, gravelly voice cut through the quiet. We could not reveal ourselves. Not until we were certain. Certain of what? The black shifter shifted fully into his human form before my eyes. Bones cracked, fur receded, and a tall, devastatingly handsome man stood in place of the massive black wolf. Dark hair fell across his forehead, his amber eyes unchanged and blazing. The silver and ash-gray wolves shifted too, transforming into 2 equally striking men. The dark-haired man spoke first, his voice rough and deep after months of disuse. We are Theron, Lysander, and Corvin. My breath caught in my throat. The triplet alpha kings of the Northern Territories, Theron continued, his amber gaze locked firmly on mine. For 10 years, we have searched for our shared true mate, our Omega. Lysander, the silver-haired king, nodded gently. We scented you 3 months ago. The bond snapped into place instantly. Corvin, the ash-gray king, his steel eyes cold and unyielding, finished the sentence. We have waited for you ever since. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling in pure shock. 3 alpha kings. Triplet rulers of an entire supernatural territory. They had stalked me, watched me, hidden their identities, and now they claimed I was their fated mate. Anger ignited in my chest, sharp and burning. You let them leave me to die? You lied to me. We never lied. Theron refuted firmly, stepping closer. We merely withheld the truth. It's the same thing. I snapped, my voice breaking. The tension thickened between us, heavy and suffocating. The three kings did not fight my anger. They did not make empty excuses. They simply stared at me, raw vulnerability shining in their powerful eyes. "What do you want from me?" I whispered brokenly. Theron's gaze softened, warm and unapologetic. "Everything. We want all of you." I hesitated, my resolve crumbling beneath their sincere devotion. I was broken, weak, discarded. They were powerful, royal, untouchable. Kings did not crave damaged omegas like me. Yet they did. They craved me. I gave them one chance. One single, fragile chance to prove they were nothing like my cruel pack. No more lies. No more secrets. If they broke my trust, they would leave me forever. They agreed in unison. The peace did not last long. Lysander's phone buzzed sharply in his pocket, breaking the tender silence. He pulled it out, his easy smile dropping into a cold, hard frown. "The council," he gritted out. Theron's jaw tightened dangerously. "They tracked us." Corbin's hand drifted to the concealed dagger at his waist, his body coiled for battle. "They know we've found our mate. They know about his magic." Ice flooded my veins. The supernatural High Council. The corrupt governing body that controlled every pack in the Northern Territories. They hunted rare magic users. They exploited omegas for political power. An unbonded omega with fire magic, mated to 3 alpha kings, Corvin muttered grimly. "It's a political nightmare. Every pack will challenge the bond. They will try to steal you, weaponize you, use you to control us." Distant engine rumbles echoed through the snow-covered trees. Headlights cut through the white darkness, growing closer by the second. 5 minutes, Corvin calculated coldly. "They'll surround us in 5 minutes. We run," Theron ordered instantly. I shook my head, my fire magic flaring faintly beneath my palms. "I'm not running from my home." "You will die here," Theron snarled, his royal alpha tones slipping free. "I just found you. I will not lose you." I grabbed my tattered coat, my mind racing to form a plan. "You 3 shift back into wolf form. You'll move faster through the deep snow. I stay right behind you." "No." All 3 kings denied in unison. Stubborn, arrogant, infuriatingly perfect men. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the quiet forest. Shouts and sharp commands cut through the howling wind. The council had arrived. We fled out the back door into the frozen wilderness. The 12 remaining wolves shifted into their human warrior forms, spreading into the snow to form a defensive perimeter. They would hold the council off, buying us precious time to escape. Corvin led the way through the dense pine trees, his steps silent and sure. Theron stayed glued to my left side, his body shielding me from flying ice and sharp branches. Lysander remained on my right, his gentle gaze constantly checking for any sign of harm. The snow was deep, dragging at my exhausted legs. I stumbled, my knees buckling, and Theron caught me before I crashed into the frozen ground. "Lysander, shift. Carry him." I opened my mouth to argue, then snapped it shut. I was weak, slow, and holding them back. Reluctantly, I climbed onto Lysander's massive silver wolf back, gripping his thick fur tightly as he sprinted through the snow. We ran for our lives. Gunshots cracked through the frigid air. A bullet buried itself into a tree trunk inches from Lysander's shoulder. Warning shots. For now. They don't want to kill me yet, I realized numbly. "They want to capture you," Theron growled, keeping pace beside us. Alive. Hostile wolves burst from the tree line, massive and scarred, their eyes glowing with violent aggression. A full enemy pack, sent to hunt us down. Corvin intercepted the largest beast mid-leap, shifting instantly into his ash-gray wolf form. Fur and blood flew as the 2 beasts collided in a brutal, vicious fight. Our loyal warriors clashed with the enemy pack, snarls and pained yelps echoing through the winter forest. I watched my protectors bleed for me, and guilt gnawed at my heart. "We have to help them," I shouted over the wind. Our priority is you. Theron bit out, his voice hard with urgency. Don't waste their sacrifice. We broke through the tree line, spotting a black SUV parked on a distant service road, our escape vehicle. We were 20 feet from freedom when a massive gray wolf slammed into Lysander's side. We crashed into the snow, rolling across the icy ground. Theron roared, shifting into his black wolf form and tackling the enemy beast to the frozen dirt. Chaos erupted all around us. More enemy wolves flooded the clearing, circling us in an inescapable ring. I scrambled to my feet, my adrenaline spiking. Fear and rage collided in my chest, igniting my dormant magic. Flames erupted from my outstretched palms, blazing bright and uncontrolled. The hostile wolves yelped and stumbled backward, terrified of the unbridled fire. I stood in the center of a ring of flickering flames, my eyes blazing with defiance. Come any closer, and I burn this entire forest to ash. Slow, deliberate clapping cut through the tense silence. A tall, distinguished middle-aged man stepped through the circle of enemy wolves, his cold gray eyes calculating and cruel. He wore the official black cloak of the High Council, his authority radiating off his rigid frame. Impressive, he drawled, his cold gaze sweeping over my burning palms. The rumors were true. The lost Omega wields raw fire magic. My blood turned to ice. You've been watching me too. We've tracked your magic since childhood, he admitted without shame. We plan to collect you eventually. Having 3 Alpha Kings tied to your rare power is simply a beneficial bonus. Theron positioned himself between me and the councilman, a low, threatening growl rumbling in his chest. Hand over the Omega, the councilman ordered flatly, or we slaughter every member of your pack. Your choice, Kings. I stared at the 3 injured, exhausted men who had sacrificed everything for me. I stared at the bleeding warriors surrounding us. I made my decision. I'll go with you, I said quietly, my voice steady. Let them leave. All of them. Kaylin, don't. Theron began desperately. It's my choice, I interrupted firmly. Before the councilman could smile in triumph, a sharp, commanding voice cut through the frozen clearing. That will not be happening. A tall, silver-haired woman stepped from the shadowed trees, her every movement oozing ancient, unshakable power. The enemy wolves parted for her like water, cowering beneath her intense gaze. Even the arrogant councilman flinched backward. Elder Seraphine, he gritted out, his tone dripping with resentment. Seraphine ignored him, her wise pale eyes locking onto my shocked face. A soft, bittersweet smile tugged at her lips. Hello, my grandson, she said gently. Your mother asked me to watch over you, long before she passed. The world tilted beneath my feet. You knew my mother? She was my daughter, Seraphine admitted quietly. She left the supernatural territories to live a mortal life, to protect you from the council's greed. I tried to find you after her death, but your pack blocked every attempt. Rage flashed across Seraphine's face as she turned to the trembling councilman. You attempt to kidnap a true mate trio's Omega and weaponize rare forbidden magic. You overstep your authority. Stand down, or I strip you of your title and exile you forever. The councilman paled, glancing at the powerful elder, at the injured feral kings, at my still blazing fire. He snarled in defeat, waving his hand to recall his pack. The enemy wolves vanished into the trees without a second glance. The moment the threat faded, my legs gave out. Theron caught me in his strong arms, holding me tightly against his chest. We recovered at Seraphine's private warded estate, hidden deep within the northern pine forests. Warmth, medical supplies, and hot food chased away the trauma of the brutal night. Seraphine tended to Lysander's shoulder wound with practiced ease, explaining my mother's hidden supernatural heritage and the true rarity of my fire magic. She promised to shield me from the corrupt council permanently. She offered me a luxury estate within the royal territories, endless wealth, and unconditional protection. I declined. I want to go home, I told her plainly. Back to my cabin. With them. Seraphine raised an elegant silver eyebrow. All three kings. That is highly unconventional. I glanced at the three men who had ruined me for any other soul. Quiet, protective Theron, playful, devoted Lysander, stoic, loyal Corvin. I smiled softly. I've never been one for convention. Seraphine chuckled, agreeing to repair my damaged cabin and expand it to fit 4 stubborn souls. She would strengthen the wards, hide my magic from the council's radar, and ensure we lived in peace. That night, in the warm firelight of the safe estate, I surrendered fully to the bond. Theron kissed me first, slow, reverent, gentle, as if I was fragile glass he feared breaking. Lysander kissed me next, soft and sweet, drinking in every quiet gasp I made. Corvin waited until I was certain, until my eyes held no doubt, and claimed my lips with a fierce, possessive kiss that branded me as his forever. They did not demand my submission. They did not view me as a tool or a possession. They loved me for my flaws, my stubbornness, my unshakable kindness. We lay tangled together beside the crackling fireplace, the three kings surrounding me in a protective, loving cage. The storm had finally ended outside, leaving the world quiet, frozen, and at peace. I was no longer alone. I was no longer discarded. I was home. Lysander broke the comfortable silence, his tone curious and warm. What will we tell people when they ask how we met? I smiled, tracing the curve of Theron's jaw with my fingertips. I knew exactly what to say. I rescued 15 wolves from freezing to death. I murmured, my voice soft and content. And I had no idea the last 3 were the triplet alpha kings. Theron pressed a lingering kiss to my forehead, his amber eyes filled with endless love. And now we're yours. Forever. I closed my eyes, surrounded by warmth, safety, and unconditional love. Forever sounded perfect. The weeks that followed our return to the cabin were the most peaceful of my entire life. True to her word, Elder Seraphine sent a construction crew of trusted shifter artisans to repair and expand the cabin. They worked quickly and quietly, their movements efficient and respectful, never once questioning why 3 alpha kings had chosen to live in a remote forest dwelling with a formerly packless omega. Within a month, the cramped one-room shack had been transformed into a spacious, warm home with 4 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a large stone fireplace that dominated the central living area. The original cabin walls were preserved as the heart of the house, a reminder of where my journey had begun. Theron, Lysander, and Corvin integrated themselves into my daily routine with a seamlessness that surprised me. They did not attempt to take over or impose royal protocols on my simple life. Instead, they adapted to my rhythms, learning the quiet patterns of my existence and weaving themselves into every moment. Theron took charge of the practical matters. He rose before dawn each morning to chop firewood, his powerful muscles flexing beneath his thin shirt as he split log after log with practiced precision. He repaired the sagging porch roof, reinforced the window frames against future storms, and cleared the snow from the winding path that led to the main road. His protective nature extended beyond physical labor. He insisted on accompanying me whenever I ventured into the forest to forage for herbs, his amber eyes constantly scanning the tree line for any sign of danger. "You don't have to follow me everywhere," I told him one crisp afternoon, my basket half full of dried winter herbs. "The council isn't going to attack in broad daylight." Theron's expression remained serious. "The council is not the only threat. Ronan's pack still roams these territories. Until we've dealt with them permanently, I will not take risks with your safety." The mention of my former pack sent a cold shiver down my spine. I had not seen Ronan or any of his wolves since the night they abandoned me, but I knew they were still out there. The thought of facing them again made my stomach twist with anxiety. What will you do if they come back? I asked quietly. Theron's amber eyes darkened with a dangerous glint. They will regret ever laying eyes on you. Lysander, in contrast to his serious brother, brought lightness and laughter into our home. He had an irrepressible sense of humor and a talent for finding joy in the smallest moments. He taught me to bake bread in the new kitchen, his flour-dusted fingers leaving playful smudges on my cheeks. He challenged me to snowball fights in the clearing behind the cabin, his delighted laughter echoing through the frozen trees when I managed to hit him square in the chest. He told me stories of the northern territories, tales of ancient feuds, legendary warriors, and the sprawling royal court that awaited us whenever we chose to return. Do you miss it? I asked him one evening, as we sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the snow in shades of gold and rose. Your kingdom? Lysander was quiet for a moment, his hazel eyes distant. I miss the people, the land, but I would trade it all in a heartbeat for this. He reached over and laced his fingers through mine, his touch warm despite the cold air. You are worth more than any throne, Kaelin. Never doubt that. Corvin was the hardest to read, but the most fiercely devoted once I learned to understand his silent language. He rarely spoke, communicating instead through small, meaningful gestures. He would appear beside me with a warm cup of tea just when my hands grew cold. He would drape a blanket over my shoulders when I fell asleep by the fire. He would stand guard at the window during the darkest hours of the night, his steel-gray eyes never closing, watching over us all with unwavering vigilance. One night, when a nightmare about my mother's death woke me gasping and trembling, it was Corvin who appeared at my bedside. He did not speak. He simply sat beside me, his presence a solid, grounding anchor in the darkness. When my breathing finally steadied, he pressed something small and smooth into my palm. I looked down. It was a polished river stone, dark gray with a single stripe of white running through its center. My mother gave me this when I was a child, Corvin said quietly, his gravelly voice barely above a whisper. She said it would protect me from bad dreams. It has never failed me. My throat tightened with emotion. Corvin, I can't take this. It's yours. It is yours now. His steel eyes held mine, intense and unyielding. You are mine. What belongs to me belongs to you. I curled my fingers around the smooth stone, feeling its comforting weight in my palm. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreams. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between the four of us deepened in ways I had never imagined possible. The mate bond was no longer just a biological pull or a fated connection. It had become a living, breathing thing, nurtured by trust and vulnerability and the countless small acts of love we performed for each other every single day. Theron taught me to shift into my wolf form. It was a painful, disorienting process at first, my body fighting against the transformation with every fiber of its being. Omegas were not typically encouraged to shift. Our wolf forms were considered smaller, weaker, less impressive than those of alphas. But Theron refused to accept that limitation. Your wolf is part of you, he said firmly, kneeling beside me in the snow as I gasped through the throbbing pain of a partial transformation. It is not weaker. It is not lesser. It is you, and you are magnificent. Under his patient guidance, I learned to embrace the shift rather than fight it. The first time I fully transformed, my wolf form was smaller than theirs, certainly, but my fur was a striking deep russet brown, and my eyes, to my surprise, glowed with the same amber fire that flickered in my human form. Lysander howled with delight when he saw me, bounding around me in excited circles. Corvin dipped his head in a respectful bow, and Theron pressed his massive black wolf forehead against mine, a rumbling purr vibrating through his chest. Beautiful, His voice echoed in my mind through the newly formed pack bond. My beautiful mate. I learned that the three brothers shared a private telepathic link that had existed since their birth. After our mating bond was fully sealed, they welcomed me into that connection, teaching me to communicate silently across distances. It was disorienting at first, hearing three distinct voices in my head, but I quickly grew to treasure the intimacy of it. No matter where I was, I could reach out and feel them, their emotions, their locations, their unwavering love. The 12 warrior wolves who had guarded us during the council's attack also integrated into our new life. They had been the king's most trusted soldiers before the blizzard trapped them, and they remained fiercely loyal to their rulers. They built small cabins of their own in the surrounding forest, forming a protective perimeter around our home. They respected my authority as their king's mate, bowing their heads whenever I passed and offering their assistance without hesitation. One of the warriors, a young beta named Aldrich with a jagged scar across his cheek, approached me one afternoon with a hesitant expression. "My Lord Kalen," he said, his voice respectful but uncertain. "I wanted to thank you for saving our lives that night. We would have frozen to death if you had not opened your door." I shook my head, uncomfortable with the gratitude. I did what anyone would have done. "No." Aldrich's voice was firm. "Most would have let us die. You chose compassion when the world had shown you none." He bowed deeply. "I would follow you into any battle. We all would." His words stayed with me long after he returned to his patrol. I had spent so long believing I was worthless, a liability, a burden, an omega with nothing to offer. Yet here, in this new life I had built from the ashes of my old one, I was valued, respected, loved. It was almost too much to comprehend. Spring came slowly to the northern territories, the deep snow melting into crystal-clear streams and the bare pine branches sprouting tender green needles. The forest came alive with the sounds of birdsong and small animals emerging from their winter burrows. The harsh, frozen world that had nearly killed me transformed into something soft and vibrant and full of hope. On the first truly warm day of the season, I woke to find the cabin empty. The three kings were nowhere to be seen. Their usual morning scents faded and distant. A flicker of unease stirred in my chest, quickly soothed when I reached out through the pack bond and felt their steady, calm presences nearby. I followed their scents through the forest, my bare feet padding silently over the soft moss and new grass. The trail led me to a small clearing I had never seen before, hidden behind a curtain of weeping willow trees. Sunlight streamed through the canopy, dappling the ground in patches of gold. In the center of the clearing, Theron, Lysander, and Corvin stood waiting. They were dressed simply, their royal finery abandoned in favor of comfortable, worn clothes. Theron held a small velvet box in his large hands. My heart stuttered. "What is this?" Theron stepped forward, his amber eyes shining with emotion. "We have been waiting for you, Kalen. For 10 long years, we searched for our true mate, never knowing if we would ever find them. And then you appeared, fierce and kind and impossibly brave, and you saved us without asking for anything in return." Lysander moved to my left, his gentle hazel eyes glistening. "You gave us a home when we had nothing. You trusted us when we were strangers. You loved us when we were broken." Corvin completed the circle, his voice steady despite the obvious emotion tightening his jaw. "We have nothing to offer you but ourselves, our hearts, our souls, our eternal devotion." Theron opened the velvet box, revealing 3 simple silver rings nestled inside. Each was inscribed with a single word, "Always." "We cannot offer you a traditional mating ceremony," Theron said quietly. "We are 3 Alpha Kings mated to 1 Omega. The world will never fully understand our bond. But we do not need the world's approval. We only need yours." Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and unashamed. "You idiots. I choked out, laughing through my sobs. You ridiculous, dramatic, perfect idiots. I launched myself at them, wrapping my arms around as much of the three kings as I could reach. They surrounded me instantly, their warmth flooding my senses, their scents mingling into the familiar, beloved blend that meant home. Yes, I whispered against Theron's chest. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They slid the rings onto my finger one by one, the cool silver warming quickly against my skin. Lysander pressed a kiss to my left temple. Corvin pressed one to my right. Theron lifted my chin and captured my lips in a slow, reverent kiss that promised forever. When we finally pulled apart, I was laughing and crying and utterly overwhelmed with joy. There's one more thing, Lysander said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I raised an eyebrow. What now? A parade? A royal decree? Better. Corvin's rare smile tugged at the corner of his lips. We're going to visit Ronan. My blood chilled. Why would we do that? Theron's amber eyes glinted with cold satisfaction. Because he needs to understand what he threw away. And he needs to know that if he ever comes near you again, he will face the combined wrath of 3 Alpha Kings. The visit to my former pack was brief, but deeply satisfying. We found Ronan in the pack's territory, holding court in a dingy lodge that smelled of stale beer and unwashed wolves. When the 4 of us strode through the door, the entire room fell into stunned silence. Ronan's face drained of color, his jaw going slack with disbelief. Kalen, he stared at me as if seeing a ghost. You're alive. No thanks to you. My voice was steady, stronger than I had expected. You left me to die, Ronan. You called me a liability and abandoned me in a blizzard. Ronan's eyes darted to the 3 imposing Alpha Kings flanking me. Recognition flickered in his gaze, followed by sheer terror. The Triplet Kings. But how? How did the worthless Omega you discarded become the mate of 3 Alpha Kings? Theron's voice was silk over steel, dangerously soft. Call it fate. Call it karma. Call it the universe's sense of humor. Lysander stepped forward, his usually gentle expression hard as stone. You had the privilege of calling Kalen Pack. You had the honor of his loyalty, his kindness, his strength. And you threw it away like garbage. But now, Corvin added, his gravelly voice cold and final, he belongs to us. And we protect what is ours. Theron leaned in close to Ronan, his amber eyes blazing with barely contained fury. If you ever come within 100 miles of Kalen again, if you ever speak his name, if you ever so much as think about him, we will destroy you. Your pack, your legacy, everything you have ever built. Do you understand? Ronan nodded frantically, his face ashen with terror. I understand. I swear, I'll never. He's yours. I won't. Good. Theron straightened, his alpha presence filling the room like a physical force. Then we're done here. We turned and walked out of the lodge without looking back. As we crossed the territory line, I felt the last frayed threads of my old pack bond snap completely. It should have hurt. Instead, I felt only relief, a lightness in my chest, as if I had finally shed a weight I had been carrying my entire life. How do you feel? Lysander asked softly, his warm hand finding mine. I took a deep breath of the crisp mountain air, filling my lungs with the scent of pine and freedom. Free, I said. I feel free. The cabin had grown along with our family. What had once been a tiny, cramped structure was now a sprawling, warm home filled with light and laughter. Seraphine visited often, her ancient eyes softening whenever she watched the 4 of us together. The warrior wolves had become more than guards. They were friends, family, the first members of a new pack we were building from the ground up. On the anniversary of the blizzard that had changed everything, I stood on the porch of our home, watching the first snowflakes of winter drift down from the gray sky. Theron, Lysander, and Corvin stood beside me, their warmth surrounding me like a protective shield. Lysander broke the comfortable silence, his tone curious and warm. What will we tell people when they ask how we met? The real story, I mean. I smiled, tracing the curve of my growing belly. A new life, a new miracle. The first child born to a triplet alpha king, mating in over 1,000 years. I rescued 15 wolves from freezing to death. I murmured, my voice soft and content. And I had no idea the last 3 were the triplet alpha kings. Theron pressed a lingering kiss to my forehead, his amber eyes filled with endless love. And now we're yours. Forever. Corvin's hand rested gently on my stomach, a rare, tender smile softening his sharp features. All of us. Forever. Lysander wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. Forever sounds perfect. I closed my eyes, surrounded by warmth, safety, and unconditional love, the soft flutter of new life stirring beneath my heart. Forever sounded absolutely perfect.